Hey guy, how are you all beautiful people are doing? Hope all of you are doing fine, and yes, this is the next season of creating Naruto comics in Naruto world. Akaban was graduated from the University of Arts and Design in the 21st century, then suddenly traversed into the Naruto's world. By bringing my knowledge of arts and my love of Naruto comic, I decided to recreate Naruto comic here. So let's start without any delay. By the way, when will we go over there, Grandma? Akaban asked. Over there, it naturally refers to the current clan land of the Uzumaki clan. After they took refuge in the land of fire, they became a line of ninja protecting the daimyo. Although relative freedom has been lost, safety is completely guaranteed after the transaction. Of course. Akaban would be so anxious to ask because it happened to be this period of time to send Danza back to the west, and the limelight was tight, so he went out to avoid the anger. After thinking about it, the Uzumaki clan is a good reason. Moreover, now that Uzumaki Mito is back to her peak, few people in the ninja world can do anything to her, and Nine Tails are even worse. It is now as good as her grandson, for fear that it will annoy Uzumaki Mito to be permanently confined. After 2 or 3 days, I have to talk to the village. 2 or 3 days. Akaban was a little frustrated. In 2 or 3 days, all that should come is here. Is there still a need to run away? Tsunade looked at them strangely, a little suspicious in her heart. What are they talking about? I'm a Jinchuriki, how can I leave the village casually? Besides, I didn't have the energy to care about you before, but your teacher was pretty good to you. So why did you want to kill him in your comic? How could Uzumaki Mito not know Akaban's thoughts, and wanted to run away since he knew that he was in trouble? Of course. She knows Akaban's commitment. This child is responsible. He doesn't run away from big things, and only flees for small ones. So like her, it's okay for him to leave the village directly. The wife of the first Hokage, a Nine-Tails Jinchuriki in her peak strength, one of the strongest ceiling ninja in the world. So who dare not agree if she wants to leave the village? Even Danza would have to give a bit of a face to Uzumaki Mito. He did not dare to stop her at all. At most, he reminded her to be careful and also come back to help Konoha at any time. As for why it is 2 or 3 days. Based on her conjecture of Akaban's plot, it will take about 2 or 3 days until Danza's death. Danza is powerful, but after all, there are 3 on Uchiha Sasuke's side, he only has 1, oh no, there is also that idiot Mitokado Homura. Originally, Uzumaki Mito had no prejudice against Mitokado Homura. After all, they were all disciples of Tobirama, and they were the same in her eyes, but the last time he tried to form a root really annoyed her. It was Uzumaki Mito's order to make Mitokado Homura sane. So it is very difficult to improve her impression of him after that happens. To this day, he is still in the prison on the Anbu side, and Konoha does not have a place where Mitokado Homura can shine unless he goes to the front line to contribute his own strength. In fact, Mitokado Homura really has this idea. The Anbu prison didn't torture him but put him in confinement. He was usually served delicious food, except that he had no freedom. However, as a pursuing ninja, he is obviously not satisfied with the status quo. Utatane Koharu has become the head of the medical department. And me. On the contrary, he was slapped a level and became an ordinary elite, not even an advisor elder. So Mitokado Homura hated Danza. After pondering for a long time, he had the idea to go to the front line to participate in the war. As long as he shows enough strength, he can once again obtain his desired position, and next time he will replace Danza's position. Of course, this is Mitokado Homura's personal thoughts. At this moment Danza was sitting in front of him, looking at him with a single eye blankly, staring at him for a long time, and he slowly said, "You want to join the war?" "Yes." Mitokado Homura's eyes are full of hatred. Danza was silent for a long time and sighed softly, "Times have changed, you don't know how severe the situation is now. Danza, I was also born from the battlefield. Don't insult my ability." Mitokado Homura stood up, beet red from anger. "Neither I nor Hiruzen can give you a command position. You can only participate as a normal shinobi, otherwise, I will not release you from Anbu." Danza got up and turned around, preparing to leave the prison. But before leaving, he paused and glanced back at Mitokado Homura. This old comrade in arms was very angry, but Danza didn't say anything wrong, nor was he insulting Homura's ability. People who have been away from the battlefield for a long time are destined to slowly derail from the battlefield. Give him a commander position. He didn't want Mitokado Homura to repeat the mistakes of Gojuk. The war requires someone to sacrifice, but to avoid unnecessary sacrifices, at least this is what Danza thinks. Leaving the prison, Danza unconsciously thought of himself in the comics. Mitokado Homura is now so similar to him. They are all capable ninjas, but why care about the position? Unless he is driven into desperation, Mitokado Homura has lost the courage to fight for his life. That's why he needs a real battle to awaken his courage and silent blood. As for the battlefield, will Mitokado Homura die? There is 99% he will die on the battlefield, but at least he died as a hero. Power is decadent. Danza sighed, maybe without Madara, he would be corroded by a power without exception, gradually having the same appearance as Danza in Akaban comic. Akaban naturally did not know what his teacher was thinking. When he returned to the comic shop from Uzumaki Mito's side, the clones had already completed all the tasks. They eat and drink and enjoy life in the sushi restaurant outside, so they have not dissipated, and still maintain the state of being cloned. But Akaban didn't mind it. What's the money for eating sushi? The benefits brought by the clones are much higher than this. Just talk about painting updates, cataloging, etc. Without these clones, he is more tired. Therefore, he chose to ignore it. But for the villagers, a bunch of clones sitting in a sushi restaurant to eat is indeed interesting scenery. After all, no clone is so skinny. However, no ninja in the whole ninja world will use the shadow clone for these things. In this regard, Akaban is the #1 person and an in-and-out pioneer. Because Naruto was not born now, and Naruto was created by Akaban. The comics are still sent to the factory. This time the number was more than yesterday, so he sent it in advance so that the factory would not be too busy to work overtime. Fortunately, Jiraiya was lying in the hospital and couldn't paint. So it was only Akaban comics that they will work on for now. The next day, as usual, the comics arrived at noon. As the factory's delivery time becomes more and more regular, Akaban has basically set an update time. Everyone often comes over at noon to occupy a seat and wait, and by the way, they can also order a takeaway. Of course, only rich people are doing it. There are many rich people in Konoha. Although many people are not the younger generation of a clan, they run a lot of businesses. Therefore, people come to the small tea shop every day. In fact, the consumption of small tea shops is not affordable for everyone. Many people run errands and deliver food to make money to support their families. Every noon, errands often make a lot of money. But some people don't need them to run errands, and there are dedicated members who run errands for them, such as the third Hokage and Danza. Hiruzen can't help but enjoy the update after reading the updates at hand. After all, Danza ushered in this day, written so miserably and so darkly by his apprentice. It's a pity that Danza's death was not written today. It must be very interesting. What a pity, I have to wait one more day. This damn brat, he is always leaving us hanging with his story in such a critical plot. I really want to lock him up and let him paint quickly. Sitting in the office for the third Hokage, Danza is a bit depressed. Because he knew very well that he couldn't keep that kid in check, maybe even the sealing technique would not work for Ikeban, unless Uzumaki Mito came personally. But how could Uzumaki Mito attack Ikeban? As long as Ikeban does not make a mistake, no one can make Ikeban suffer. It's different from Hiruzen, who is gloating here. Danza was so angry that he pulled out a short blade when he saw the whole picture of that hand, but after thinking about it, he returned the blade to its scabbard. It was not that he had a good temper, but that his disciple made too fast progress. So he can only take a step back. The more he thinks about it, the angrier he becomes. Although Danza has long known that he has a bad image in the comics, and he has to follow certain development channels and may become that kind of person, but he knows, but he is still very angry. Why, when Hiruzen died, he died heroically with his sacrifice, but Danza seems to be beaten by a junior without a fight. Anyhow, the third Hokage died in the hands of Orochimaru. But what about Danza? He died to become a stepping stone for Sasuke Uchiha, a brilliance that cannot be erased in Sasuke's brilliant record, and this wave of high probability cannot even be changed. In addition, the Danza in the painting is too stupid. He uses his Izanagi to pick up all the skills. It's not that he can't move his legs. Or did he forget the fighting skills accumulated during the previous wars? Then he suddenly remembered what he said to Mitokado Homura yesterday. The Danza in the comics is so similar to Mitokado Homura. Sitting in a high position for so long makes you blind in power that makes you think you're still strong, but after coming to the battlefield, only death awaits you. Thinking of this, he took the comic to the prison. Go see that old friend, and see what he is going to do. In the comic shop, Ikeban had been waiting for Danza to come to him, but the expected thing did not happen. Too busy. He was a little uncomfortable. Before, if he wrote something that made Danza uncomfortable, he would become his errand boy for that day. For example, if he asked him to do this and that, he would do it. But there was no movement this time, and he was really panicked. Do not erupt in silence, but perish in silence. Which one does the teacher belong to? Ikeban couldn't figure it out. But in any case, the update had to be completed as usual. After the shadow clones were separated, he drew a few words, but because he couldn't concentrate, he simply found an excuse to slip. But after he slipped out, he was quickly arrested. Orochimaru is here. Since the last time he completed the Impure World reincarnation study but was sealed by Uzumaki Mito, he hadn't moved for a long time, but this time he came to Ikeban for a simple reason. Mad Dai has opened the 7 gates of the 8 inner gates. In the past, Dai could also open the 7th gate, but that was under various blessings such as the devil fruit, but still, he would suffer a lot of trauma after opening. But this time is different. Nowadays, Dai has been able to do so under the 7th gates without causing devastating trauma to himself. As far as the 8 inner gates' 7th gate is concerned, Dai has reduced the side effects to a tolerable range. So Orochimaru hopes to experiment. But since he opened the 7th gates, who can test Dai? Only Akaban. Because he has the fruit of thunder, he can transform his body into thunder and lightning. 7 gates, daytime tiger. This is a stunt developed by Guy and has a very brilliant record in anime. Now Dai has been able to achieve the 7 gates, but he hasn't fought in his 7 gates state yet, so Orochimaru came to Akaban because he knows he is very strong. Although his taijutsu is not great, Akaban performs many operations, and under the elementalization of the thunder fruit, it can effectively avoid the damage from Dai in his 7 gates state, and at the same time, they can roughly judge its power in the moment of life and death. This is also impossible. Except for Akaban, no one in Konoha is qualified to be the target of Dai in his 7th state. The 3rd Hokage and Uzumaki Mito may be able to, but he dare not call these 2 elders over. So he can only go to Akaban. At the training ground, Akaban saw Dai, who had been gone for a long time, standing in the middle of the training ground, adjusting his breath. It seems that a lot has changed. Not only his physical skills but also his essence. Although the previous Mat Dai was strong, he was full of that, well, how to say, even if he was very strong, it would look like a dick to others, and being loyal and honest seemed like very good bullying. But it's different now. Standing in the center, he had a deep aura and faintly possessed the style of a master. Of course. This was on the premise that Dai would only stand still. Because when he saw Akaban coming, he immediately ran over to salute, and that master temperament was instantly destroyed. Master Akaban, I can already open the 7th gate under normal circumstances. I know. I heard from Orochimaru, come and try opening the 7 gates. Akaban nodded, and took a step back but didn't go too far. There is something different between him and Orochimaru. Akaban knows medical ninjutsu and knows a lot of medical knowledge, so it's best for him to see it up close in case something was wrong. Dai nodded slightly, then closed his eyes. It seems that Akaban was thinking that Dai would need to adjust his state for a while, but suddenly sensed that a powerful chakra airflow erupted from Dai's body. Yes, chakra airflow. Because it's too strong. 6th gate, the gate of view. Opening the gate of view directly, it can be seen that Might Dai's attainments on 8 inner gates are already very high. In the original comics, Mat Dai relied on himself to fully develop the 8 inner gates, even more. Now there is research guidance from Orochimaru, and the precious nutritional meals he made. But in Konoha, he is the only one who has trained 8 inner gates so high. The other students in the taijutsu class right now can only open until the 3rd gate. But it doesn't mean they are weak, since those 3 children are already regarded as leaders in taijutsu among their peers, which shows how high the requirements of 8 inner gates for users are. Whether it is Dai, Guy or Rock Lee, they all have alternative talents in this art. Akaban felt his aura, nodded after a moment and said, "Continue." Yes. In an instant, the blue air current burst out. These blue air currents are not chakras but are formed by sweat evaporating after opening the 7th gate. After it bursts out, it forms a unique aura. Try to attack. Okay. Obviously, Dai couldn't guide this force correctly at this moment. But he has another trick. Finger pistol. Feng tilde. With a finger, Akaban's shoulder was pierced instantly, and a blood hole came out. Ah! Akaban let out a painful cry. It was too fast, he couldn't see clearly at all. Maybe he had to open his Sharingan to see the blow clearly. Of course. Using observation haki is also fine, but he didn't use it just now. However, the power of this finger pistol is very strong. On his wound, a scorching air current continuously destroys the tissue around the wound. After Akaban was treated with Palm Immortal technique, he quickly recovered. Very strong, try it again and give me a punch. This. Dai hesitated. He had never fought with the seventh gate open before. This finger pistol was casually attacking with all his strength. So what if Akaban couldn't stop it? This is no joke. Akaban smiled and said, "It's okay, I can avoid it, but you have to be careful to control it, because you may become unconscious later." Observation Haki activated. The observation Haki can predict the opponent's attack in advance, which is especially useful in dealing with Dai's attack. Although he can't avoid it even if he notices it by relying solely on his physical skills, but with his Thunder Devil Fruit, it's not a problem. Then I'm going. After uttering the reminder, Dai's figure quickly disappeared in place. In the next second, he has reached Akaban, and before his shadow can keep up with his speed, the air currents generated by his fists and feet have already reached Akaban. This is the embryonic form of the tiger. However, at this time, Akaban had turned into a thunder, and the airflow, fists and feet could not hurt him, but the pressing aura and attacking speed almost made Akaban understand the power of the seventh gate, the Gate of Wonder. Very strong. But when Dai passed Akaban, who was in his thunder form, Akaban could emotionally feel the muscles on the opponent's body breaking. After a kick from Akaban that sent Dai flying, Orochimaru quickly said, "It's okay, cancel it." Yes. Dai cancelled the seven-door state and looked exhausted. Still barely. The normal body can withstand the side effects of opening the seven gates, but after using it, it is estimated that the muscles of the body will also break a lot, and a medical ninja is needed to help recover. However, the side effects should not be so great if he used his Devil Fruit ability. Akaban walked up to him, treated him with mystical palm technique, and then after giving him a minute to rest, they continued their experiment and watched Dai open the seven gates after activating his Devil Fruit ability. And as expected, he became more terrifying than normal. Regardless of speed, destructive power, physical stamina, and endurance, Akaban even suspected that Dai could open the 8th gate relatively harmlessly. But these are just prospects for the future. At present, Dai can't do this. Even when he opens his 7 gates, he has to use the bison form to avoid a lot of damage. In short, he still needs to work hard. Akaban exchanged general data with Orochimaru, and then gave some suggestions on the moves. In fact, there is no good suggestion, mainly some techniques that Guy used in the anime like the daytime tiger, etc. A strong person on his side that can open the 7th or 8th gates while also learning the 6 navy styles, just thinking about it makes Akaban excited. His tilde. This child is more terrifying than Guy in the anime if he masters it all. Thinking of this, Akaban feels that he has a lot of motivation to draw comics and redeem the armament Haki as soon as possible. As for the Haki of the Conqueror, it's hard to say whether the ninja world has this kind of ability. Even if he has it, it has nothing to do with Dai. After all, his aura really doesn't look like a conqueror. In the office, the third Hokage peeking through his crystal has a weird face. It was accidental that he would use this technique to check. Originally, he wanted to find the whereabouts of Orochimaru to see what his beloved disciple was doing, but he accidentally saw Akaban helping with the experiment and saw the shocking scene. From what he remembered, the child named Mat Dai was not strong. And the third Hokage remembers that Akaban taught the Taijutsu class, right? At that time, it was said that Akaban was the training instructor, and Orochimaru was the director of the institute. As a result, from the beginning of the class to now, it was almost all managed by Orochimaru. The most important thing was that Orochimaru himself had no opinion. It is also quite a skill to make people willing to work. This kid has something. The more the third Hokage looks at it, the more he feels that there is no place for his 3 apprentices to compete to become the next Hokage. He had no opinion on Akaban, but he couldn't help feeling depressed at the thought of retiring in the future and being ridiculed by his old friend Danza. However, this alone is not a melancholic thing, at most he just feels unhappy and depressed in his heart. What really makes him sad is the new application sent on his table. This is an application for the release of criminals. Criminal, Mitokado Homura. Application. Participate in the battle in the land of River as a normal shinobi. Mitokado Homura will join the war. Hiruzen did not doubt the strength of his old friend, but regardless of the mentality or the current state, Mitokado Homura did not take advantage of the battlefield. Going to the front line, I'm afraid there will be more misfortunes. However, after thinking about it for a long time, he still signed his name on the top. This is the last thing he can help as a friend. And he hopes that Mitokado Homura will wake up on the battlefield. In the land of wind. At this moment, the army is out. The 2 advisors and many Jonins were all deployed, and the remaining half of the troops stayed at Hidden Sand Village with the Kazekage, waiting for support or fighting in other places at any time. Ibizo knew that by spreading them away like this, Zack could truly control the Hidden Sand Village as he wanted. But he didn't make a move. The situation is not in his favor that a little mistake can take his life. So he can only take one step aside to see, at least when it really becomes messed up, the ninja on the front line can completely surrender and turn around, leaving a fire for the Hidden Sand Village. Therefore, he did not hesitate to turn to the front line. And Madara and Black Zetsu never stopped it. But their reasons are not the same. Madara lacks interest in killing Ibizo, while Black Zetsu has no ability. Ibizo is no better than Shaman that was transformed at that time. It is still a little bit difficult to control Ibizo perfectly with the current strength of Black Zetsu. At this time, Madara was sitting in the cave, and some insects in the desert drilled under his feet from time to time. They are all Madara's eyeliners. Under the control of Sharingan, they spread over several dozen miles around the cave. As long as they see Black Zetsu, they will immediately return and report the situation. He would never show his feet in front of Madara, but who would guard against some bugs? Of course. Black Zetsu would not do anything even if he was alone, but some details could reveal part of the information. Now, on the surface, Madara trusts Black Zetsu more and more. But in fact, he has already made a decision. Once he got the 10 tails, he would immediately seal Black Zetsu, preventing him from having any chance of making trouble. From the constantly returning insect information, Madara knew that a dark and strange thing quickly approached through the ground. Black Zetsu is almost here. Is it today's comics? Madara pointed to his head, his eyes were lackluster. He was a little tired of this comic. Recently, the plot is like a piece of nonsense to him. Apart from the Eye of the Moon plan, there is nothing too attractive, and there is not much to look forward to and excite him. Had he not been observing the situation of Black Zetsu and Kurama Akaban, he would have been too lazy to follow along with the plot. At this moment, Black Zetsu emerged from the ground in front of him and sent 2 volumes of comics to the chair, then he stepped aside without speaking. This is Madara's reading time. Madara turned the pages of the book and read it quietly. Seeing Danza's exposed arm and Sharingan's, his eyelids suddenly twitch. Hashirama cells, and also a handful of Sharingans. What a luxurious thing to have. However, it's only an arm, Sharingans and a Mangekyo Sharingan. Can Danza use it? Madara sneered. It's the Uchiha's power, so how can a foreigner be able to use it appropriately? Only Uchiha's bloodline can truly control these eyes. Also, only Uchiha Madara can maximize Sharingan. However, he didn't expect Kurama Ikeban to know Kotomatsu Kami. How dare those scums blubber the family secrets? Madara cursed. I'm afraid that even the secret of the stone tablet was shared with this foreigner. Of course. Madara despised Konoha's current Uchiha family, but he had to admit that Uchiha Yuan was in his place, seeking his own government, and steadily continuing the family. It's just that this kind of continuation, in Madara's view, is not as refreshing as death. Their concept is different, so there is nothing to say. Black Zetsu felt Madara's psychological fluctuations, and he noticed Madara's changes, but for the time being, he could not see the problem from Madara's expression, so he could only put his doubts in his heart. At the land of River, the confrontation between the two seemed to come to an end. Because at this time, the Sand Hidden Village has directly set off an offensive against the country of the river. At first, their purpose was to search for the missing Sand Hidden Village ninja, but anyone with a discerning eye knows that it was a lie. And they also know that the Hidden Sand Village officially declared war. That's why the entire country of River has become a mess, and the most troubled is undoubtedly Kakuzu. He has just completed the integration of half of the underground forces of the country of River, extending the strength of himself and Ikeban to the most prosperous area. As a result, the war came. Don't talk about smuggling in the Land of Wind, even the smuggling business in Hidden Rain Village and Hidden Stone Village is greatly hindered. After all, they are also afraid that Hidden Sand Village will go crazy, and will make a scene like last time. If it's Hidden Sand Village alone, I am afraid they wouldn't dare not provoke the forces in this way. But Madara dares. Anyway, the Hidden Sand Village is not his, and his purpose is only to collect the first-tailed beast, to ensure that the last one-tail's Jinchuriki is in his own hands. In the Hidden Stone Village, Onaki currently has a headache. Not because of his waist pain but because of a certain man. After looking back, if he really met him now, facing Madara, he wouldn't stand a chance for sure. My lord, you have been worried about these matters for 2 days. What matters? It's all your fault that I become like this. Onaki replied irritably as he placed the comic he was holding on his table. On its page, facing the 5-Kage conference, Reikage preached that he was the only ninja who had fought against Madara in the world. This is outrageous. Is that a fight? Unilaterally killed by a spike, there is no resistance to it, okay. In addition, Madara is the mastermind behind Land of Wind action. As friendly forces, is it appropriate for you to draw these in the comic? Aren't you just pouring fire on my head? He kept cursing. At this time, a new volume of comics was delivered by an Anbu ninja, and he immediately started reading it. After a while, Onaki coughed violently, and after drinking several sips of water, he calmed down, followed by another string of anger. The Sushikage guards are not surprised after seeing him in anger. Since the last time he tasted Ikeban's attack, Onaki has paid attention to this set of comics called Naruto, and every time it is updated, they have to buy it, and Onaki on the other hand will criticize it after reading. Fortunately, there is no internet in this era. Konoha. Akaban is in distress on how to solve tomorrow's update. Danza and Mitokado Homura are finished, then Naruto and Sasuke will meet again, and Tsunade recovers. And most importantly, Orochimaru, Impure World Reincarnation. In tomorrow's update, it will show how to use the Impure World Reincarnation and the summoning of the characters who died before Akatsuki. The reincarnated character plus Akatsuki, this is the real hostile force of the Fourth Ninja War. But in this way, the Impure World Reincarnation will also be more valued. Although Danza has now asked Uzumaki Mito to seal all their memories about the reincarnation Impure World Reincarnation except Akaban and Uzumaki Mito themselves, and destroy Impure World Reincarnation from the Scroll of Seals, but in the end, it will inevitably involve a problem. Impure World Reincarnation. In a sense, it's like driving a corpse. You need to dig out other people's ancestral graves and use a part of their corpses, then use the Impure World Reincarnation to summon the dead. It is indeed inhumane. But if you want to say it is strong, that's the case. A bunch of expert people being summoned do cause a lot of trouble for everyone, but in the end, it seems to help those who died to realize their own long-cherished wish. But the problem was both the third Hokage and Uzumaki Mito are quite opposed to using this forbidden jutsu. It violates the world's law of life and death. Especially Uzumaki Mito, she was in awe of death, and she would not agree to do so unless it reached the end of the world. However, Akaban felt that the trouble was not Konoha itself, but an outsider from the pseudo-allied Shinobi forces. Some people don't care about taboos. He pondered for a moment and felt that he was completely thinking too far. Konoha and the other major villages are now allies, but when Uchiha Madara and Black Zetsu are destroyed it will not be. The more Konoha are killed and injured, the greater their right to speak. There are no eternal allies in the world. Akaban no longer thinks about it anymore, except for the death of Mitokado Homura, and when Kakashi is appointed as Hokage, only Utatane Koharu, the rest is unchanged. It's a pity. Kakashi hasn't become Hokage for a second, and the fifth Hokage Tsunade has regained consciousness. He didn't know what Sakumo would think when he saw it. Akaban compiled the books and sent them to the arsenal, but this time he didn't just send them like always. In addition to the comics, he sent a shadow clone over. Because Izumi Yamano mentioned to him this time, a copy of Jiraiya's Affection and Romance was inexplicably stolen. If it's between Naruto and One Piece, no one will notice a missing portion due to its number of copies. But it's not the same for Jiraiya's Intimacy and Romance book. Because its first batch has a fixed number of copies. Thus, the problem was found. Akaban didn't think much about it at first and thought maybe they lost it, or maybe it was stolen, but after thinking about it, it wouldn't hurt to let the shadow clone squat there for a while, maybe there is any gain. After all, inside the theft is broken. There is this kind of ability in the world, and there is no one who steals books except Black Zetsu. These days, even Danza has bought genuine copies. Only this alien is not careful and never goes through formal channels. For this reason, Akaban decided to only sleep shallowly tonight. As long as Black Zetsu appeared, he would use Flying Thunder God Jutsu to support his clone. If he can be caught directly, then Madden's leg will be broken. The night is getting darker. Inside the factory, a black shadow drilled out of the ground, then quickly touched two comics, sneaked into the ground and evacuated. However, before he could go far, he suddenly felt something was wrong. This seems to be Genjutsu. He was shocked and quickly began to crack the illusion. Black Zetsu's resistance to genjutsu is very strong, and he broke away from genjutsu in a moment, but he soon found someone standing behind him. Kurama Ikeban. Judging from the effect of this seal, it is estimated that it is a sealing technique, but Black Zetsu is stunned. When did he get the mark of Flying Thunder God? Madara explained to him that the Flying Thunder God, that technique requires the cooperation of imprints. Without a mark, the target cannot be moved instantly. Could it be that when I fell into the illusion just now, I was marked? Black Zetsu was a little dazed. He just didn't notice it. Firstly, he didn't care. Secondly, Ikeban was hiding well, his aura and power were perfectly hidden, but when did he get the mark of Flying Thunder God? Although there is no sweat on his face, Black Zetsu deeply felt the fear at this moment, especially when Ikeban is staring at him indifferently, exuding a chilling breath. This kind of threat. I might die. Water prison technique. Black Zetsu desperately drilled down, but the next second the water prison was lifted into the sky and Black Zetsu was caught on it, and then from Ikeban's hands, a terrible thunder and lightning power. This kind of lightning not only has chakras but also has elements of natural energy. What made him even more frightened was that not far away, a strong and unmatched aura was rushing in his direction, and only by feeling that aura, he knew it was Uzumaki Maito. Mother wants me to save her, how can I be sealed here? Run, I must run. Black Zetsu resisted the pain, and directly discharged his body from the water ball, and sank into the earth with lightning speed. Although there were still some remaining in the water prison technique, these were just clones. Ikeban feels a little regretful. He hesitated just now. If he used his Rinnegan and the power of 6 paths, he might have a chance to keep Black Zetsu forever, but if it didn't work, then his cards against Madara would undoubtedly be exposed. At the same time, he sensed the aura of Uzumaki Maito approaching, so he wanted to take a gamble to see if he could halt Black Zetsu movement until Uzumaki Maito's arrival. As a result, it's a pity that Black Zetsu broke his wrist and ran away, leaving this small black spot in Ikeban's water prison technique. Before Uzumaki Maito arrived, Ikeban took the lead in taking out the sealing scroll and sealed the black spot inside the scroll. This thing is a yin and yang creation. Who knows if it will volatilize and disappear after leaving its body. The sooner it is sealed, the more valuable it will be for research. Where is he? Uzumaki Maito asked after she arrived. It was not a short distance from Konoha to this side. But she still was able to sense what's happening on this side, since even when resting she kept using her perception to monitor her surroundings. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to know that Ikeban was fighting. I wanted to wait for you to rush to seal him, but I lack effective sealing techniques. Ikeban sighed. Dealing with Black Zetsu is definitely not something that ordinary sealing techniques can solve, only the series of sealing techniques that Uzumaki Maito used to seal Madara Limbo can work. Indeed, you don't have the adamantine chain after all. Uzumaki Maito said, feeling a little regret for coming late. Black Zetsu is too mysterious, and no one knows what he is, and if they can seal him, it's like scraping one of Madara's arms. After all, Madara is old and cannot move freely like Black Zetsu. Unfortunately. But there are gains. He slipped fast and left a part of his body in a hurry. I was afraid it would disappear if it was too special, so I sealed it up. Ikeban grinned and raised the scroll in his hand. Hearing it, Uzumaki Maito's eyes lit up. Part of its body. This is very precious research material. After all, as of now, no one knows what Black Zetsu is. But with this part of the material, the mystery of Black Zetsu's body may be found. Good job, but after this time, he might not dare to come again next time. Uzumaki Mito thought it was a pity as they can't find another chance like this to catch Black Zetsu. However, she didn't blame Akaban. Just after hearing the cause and effect, no one knew in advance that Black Zetsu would do this kind of activity. Although Akaban had some guesses, he was not sure after all. Besides, although Uzumaki Mito is strong, it's still hard for her to hide her aura. One, because of her own strength. Secondly, it was affected by Kyuubi. The nine-tailed chakra is too eye-catching. No matter how dark it is, it can still be found in an instant. But Akaban is different. He not only has the Rinnegan, but also the Fruit of Thunder, which can integrate himself with nature as much as possible, and will not be perceived for the first time. This is why he did not call Uzumaki Mito. Subsequently, Uzumaki Mito modified the seal scroll. The modification method was not complicated, and it was sealed with a special container instead of the seal scroll. Although the scroll can seal it, it cannot be observed or studied after being sealed. But this special container is different. But probably only Uzumaki Mito can do this. Except for her, no one in the entire Uzumaki family currently masters this sealing technique. After doing this, Akaban took her back to the Konoha, Senju clan. Tsunade looked nervous. Her grandma suddenly ran out at night. If she didn't know that her grandma was strong, she would have thought that Ninetales had gone violently. Don't worry, it's okay. Uzumaki Mito stroked her hair after they appeared. Tsunade breathed a sigh of relief, and was completely relieved, but seeing Akaban, she glared at him fiercely. It must be this guy who caused the trouble, that's why her grandma rushed out in a hurry without even saying what's happening. She pondered for a while. It was a bit late today, and she must have asked what happened when she looked back. It's a bit late, I'll leave first, and I will discuss the specific situation tomorrow. Akaban yawned. In order to catch Black Zetsu, it is a miracle that he has not slept until now. He has fallen asleep long ago. Rest early. Tsunade waved her hand to indicate that he could leave. In the next second, Akaban instantly left. Uzumaki Mito didn't explain to Tsunade, and Tsunade didn't ask, but it wasn't a secret, neither she nor Akaban meant to hide it. It's just that it's really late today. The second day. Most people just had breakfast, some people came to look for Akaban. Like the third Hokage and Danza. Akaban knew that it should be about what happened last night, so the third Hokage and Danza immediately asked him to discuss what happened and, by the way, let him join the research on Black Zetsu remains together. After all, in the eyes of others, Akaban is an in-and-out research genius. Konoha's medical ninjutsu can be as powerful as it is now, and most of it is to his credit. However, Akaban couldn't figure out what is Black Zetsu for the time being. He only knew that Black Zetsu was a creation of yin and yang, which was similar to the origin of the Black Receiver, but not very different, so he himself didn't know how to study that thing. It's just that there are some things that he has to explain. For example, the battle last night. Everyone is very curious as to what method Akaban used to make a mud-like slippery Black Zetsu to abandon part of its body to survive in order to escape. This is ridiculous. Akaban used to recount the cause and effect, but he didn't say that he used the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan ability but simply used illusionary technique to turn the imaginary into reality to generalize. Anyway, so far, no one has reached his level in the control of the five senses, and he can fool around casually. And of course, the third Hokage and Danza believe it. As mentioned above, no one has achieved Akaban's current achievements in the illusion controlled by the five senses, so of course, no one knows what its limits are. The evolution of turning fictitious into reality is not unexpected. Of course. Another reason is that the Kurama are Indra descendants, and this development is not surprising. For this reason, everyone didn't even care about the update of the comics. All their brain cells went to study the black body, but they didn't study it for a long time. Since they only know that this is a very strange composition. In the end, Uzumaki Maito incidentally mentioned going to the Uzumaki clan to participate in the renunciation, and the third Hokage naturally agreed, but Danza had a little problem. He felt that Akaban and Uzumaki Maito, as the combat power that could threaten Madara, shouldn't leave Konoha at this time. If they leave, neither Konoha nor their own safety is guaranteed. From a certain point of view, it is also true. However, Madara's target was Kyuubi, and he suffered a loss in Konoha last time, and Black Zetsu was defeated this time. It is unlikely that he will attack Konoha again in a short time. The other one is, even if he attacked Konoha, Akaban would be able to return as soon as possible. Together with Uzumaki Maito, he can borrow the Kyuubi chakra and use the Flying Thunder God Jutsus. As long as there are Kyuubi, he doesn't need to worry about chakra consumption at all. And since Akaban said will leave a long-lasting shadow clone in Konoha, Danza agreed. Maybe Danza wants only this condition. He knew very well that he couldn't stop Uzumaki Maito from doing it, and now it was just to leave Danza face and maintain his authority. All in all, the result is good. But what Danza thinks after seeing the comics, is not easy to say. Actually, when Danza went back, he did see the comics, and he also saw his sorrowful death as he expected. He failed to achieve even one change. In the final 4 tetragram seal, the 4 tetragram seal was so powerful, and in the end, only himself and half of the bridge were sealed, and he was ashamed to say it. Among all Hokage, he is probably the most unskilled. No, since taking office until now, how long has Danza been Hokage? Although the comics have drawn dozens of chapters, in reality, I am afraid it will be less than a day. Danza felt pain for a while, and he almost couldn't hold back wanting to bring Akaban back from the Uzumaki clan for training. Thinking about it carefully, this kid probably had premeditated it, that's why he ran. Otherwise, how could his timing be so good? I got careless. He sighed in sorrow. It seems that this one can only be found after the time. However, in addition to himself, Mitokado Homura also died in a terrible manner. At any rate, he has a long description. There are 3 shots in total from the Battle of Mitokado Homura until he died. One is when he rushed up to confront Sasuke. The second one was when he was held by Sasuke Susanoo. The third one was being squeezed by it and died. And it seems his old friend's death is much more pathetic than his right. Danza seemed to feel distressed for his old comrades. Although he had been away from the battlefield for a long time, his body and skills were a bit rusty, but he wouldn't be like this, right? Well, if you think about it, Sasuke, who has Susanoo, is already very strong, and he is considered strong by the 5 Kages. So with that kind of strength, it's not weird for Mitokado Homura to die on his hand easily. His old comrade's death was not wrong, but just a bit miserable. On the other side, Black Zetsu rushed all the way. After escaping from Konoha, he still did not dare to stay and did not dare to relax until he left the country of fire. After he goes back to the land of wind, he gives the comics to Madara. As a result, Madara was not satisfied. He didn't pay attention to it before, but when I returned to the cave, he found that the second half of the comic was missing because of his eagerness to escape. Many of the pages were broken, and some were even missing. That's why Madara was angry about it. In a sense, Black Zetsu tried his best, but it happened that he was almost caught. Until now, he still didn't understand how he was exposed. After all, there are so many comics he stole from that place, but he has never been discovered before, but this time he was ambushed. So there must be a problem. Madara and Black Zetsu thought together for a while and finally set their sights on the affectionate romance comic book. He took this series for the first time yesterday, and something happened today. That means it's this thing's fault. Black Zetsu was full of anger in his heart. If he had known that, he wouldn't take it anymore. It wasn't such a nice comic anyway. He was almost caught this time, and he already had a psychological shadow. In the future, let alone go to Konoha, even in the villages around Konoha, he dared not set foot for fear of being caught again by accident. Black Zetsu didn't want to experience the life and death he felt at that time. Madara did not force him to get the comic from the factory, but he could still take a trip to other retail stores in the country of fire. Especially now when he reads the updates. Although it's quite broken, he still vaguely saw the impure world reincarnation appear on the scene, but the picture was too mutilated and he didn't know what was going on. As for Danza, in Madara's eyes, Danza is really nothing. Even if that kid has his arm full of Sharingans like in the comics, he is not something to be worried about. In Konoha, he is only afraid of Uzumaki Maito at the moment, and even Akaban is not among his worries. As far as he knows, Akaban is at best a relatively large ant. He can cause some trouble, but it's nothing more. Unlike Uzumaki Maito, her adamantine chain sealing technique is something to be wary about. Fortunately, Uzumaki Maito doesn't know sage art, otherwise, it will be more troublesome. After reading it, he shattered the comic directly. Poor Black Zetsu, he turned back again to buy new comics. I haven't come out for a long time, I really miss it. Tsunade ran in the forest, quite comfortably. Behind her, followed by a bunch of red-haired children, it is naturally little Tomiko who is in the lead. Her physique is very good, and she also has the most chakra among the other children. Akaban was behind, chasing after them unhurriedly. Anyway, there is Flying Thunder God Jutsu, so there is no need to worry about falling behind. Uzumaki Maito is about the same speed as him, but there is a reason for the two to go together. They are discussing the Tail Beast Chakra. Akaban owns the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. If there are massive chakras, he can provide ultra-long distance teleportation support. It is very difficult to obtain that amount of chakras through normal channels. The Tail Beast is undoubtedly the fastest way. Uzumaki Maito's idea was to distribute some of the tailed beast's chakra to Akaban's side, and let him try to control and digest it, similar to what Namikaze Minato did, dividing the 9 tails into yin-yang, and seal them in 2. Of course, she didn't plan to divide the 9 tails, but simply divided a little chakra to Akaban to see if Akaban could digest it. To be honest, Akaban was very excited. At first, he was even yearning for the Kyuubi chakra so that he can summon more clones. If Uzumaki Maito is in an old state, he might agree to or even take the initiative to propose a plan to divide the Kyuubi. But right now, Yes, it's not necessary. Ninetails chakra is very strong, but due to its special source and irritable nature, it is not conducive to hiding and controlling. It is better to use his own chakra. If it is not enough, just borrow a little. The speed of the two is faster than the previous one, and they quickly catch up after talking. The place they were going to were not far from Konoha. If there are no children, they may be able to reach it in half a day. But because there are children with them, they may not be there until the evening. On Konoha's side, Akaban left a shadow clone. The role of the shadow clone is not only to complete the task of whistleblowing but also to update the comics and compile the work. As for the poster promotion, he has in advance instructed Kurama Yunlang to find someone to paint. Comics have been popular for a while, and it is not difficult to find someone who has mastered drawing skills. There are only 2 shadow clones, and the update speed is bound to be slow, but the advantage is that there are quite a lot of chakras in each clone, which can last a long time. Besides, even if chakra is not enough, there is still a family of dream tapper. Since the last big dream project, Akaban has met the rest of the dream tapers family, but the options are more extensive, and the abilities of those dream tapers are not just illusions and dreams, and it is not difficult to borrow some chakras. Therefore, even if Akaban leaves Konoha, the comic work over there will not be too much. At most, it is not updated as much as before. But halfway through, Konoha brought a message through the dream tapper. About the war, you need to contact the daimyo. Although Danza was disliked by many wise and discerning dream tapper, he was also a contractor of the dream tapper family. It was a piece of cake for him to summon a sentence if he wanted to. It will come sooner or later, even if it hides in the sky. Akaban sighed inwardly. The daimyo is not bad to him, giving the green light to comics, as long as their needs are basically met. However, this time he mainly prepared for the war. Not only the big names but also many ministers will be present. It will be quite troublesome to wrestle. I hope those ministers are not too stupid. If they have to argue with each other to show their sense of existence, they will really blow up. In the afternoon, Akaban and his party arrived in Kyoto. Not long after entering the city, they saw a street full of comics. This street specializes in selling comics. For example, clothing, small accessories, etc. Naturally, there is no copyright fee, but Akaban can't help feeling proud of seeing the streets and alleys full of things that have been influenced by him. Although it was copied. He was embarrassed and walked along the street with the large group. After a turn, he finally found the current clan land of the Uzumaki clan. Uzumaki clan's clan land used to be a garden of daimyo, which occasionally he lived in, but more often it was abandoned. After the Uzumaki clansmen fled to the land of fire, the daimyo arranged for them to live there. The garden is not far from the daimyo palace, and it only takes a moment to reach it with the feet of a ninja. In addition, behind the clan land is a mountain forest adjacent to forests and lakes. The scenery is good and the ground is a good place for training. Everyone walks along the street to the door of the clan land. Before Akaban and the others approached, there was a tumult from inside the wall. Next second. Whoosh tilde. More than a dozen human figures instantly fell on the street in front of everyone, and it was Sarutabi Shinosuke and Uzumaki Fusang who were in front of them. Shinosuke looked up and saw Uzumaki Mito. He was immediately surprised and respectfully said, "I have seen Mito-sama." Mito-sama. Could it be? See, I've seen. Fusang thought of a legend in the family and suddenly bowed with excitement. Uzumaki Mito lifted their head up and said with a smile, "You don't need to do this. Although I am married to the Senju family, I am also a member of the Uzumaki clan. You can call me grandmother. This. I will notify the patriarch." After a ninja gave the salute, he noticed Uzumaki Tomiko again, only to think of something to be notified, and quickly ran into the clan. Next, Fusang introduced the Uzumaki clan and Tsunade into the clan. Akaban didn't follow up. He has to go to meet the daimyo, and it is enough to send them here. Besides, he still has something to say. He wants to talk to Shinosuke. Akaban, I didn't expect you to come too. Which one did you do it with, is it Tsunade or the little loli? Shinosuke leaned over, looking wretched. Really? They are really father and son, and some things will inevitably be inherited. Akaban's face changed suddenly, and then he slapped Shinosuke's shoulder, hinting at him frantically. Shinosuke's face was stiff, and he didn't dare to look back, but immediately changed his words and said, I'm confused. It must be Tsunade. She is beautiful and gentle. The best choice. And of course, it's a brother and sister love you have for little Tomiko. It's all right, everyone is gone. Akaban chuckled. As soon as he lied to him, Shinosuke was immediately fooled and frantically said Tsunade was good. Shinosuke looked back, didn't see anyone, and didn't know where he was deceived, and suddenly became a little embarrassed and said, "You lied to me. How can I be, just now, she left when you praised her," said Akaban and glanced at his waist. Shinosuke's waist was tied with a fire waistcloth, and his outfit was also majestic, vaguely resembling Asuma. Of course, he is still different from Asuma. I am now the guardian ninja belonging to the daimyo. In addition to me, there are some people from the Uzumaki clan and the Fire Temple ninja monk. Shinosuke raised his waistcloth, and then explained it to Akaban. Not bad. Akaban nodded slightly. There is no such thing as 12 guardian ninja. With the addition of the Maelstrom family, I am afraid there will be no such saying in the future. Hey, don't think that I have been wasteful for this period of time. I have worked hard too, and now I have the strength of a Jonin. I will definitely defeat you this time. Shinosuke said with full confidence. Akaban looked at him strangely, stared at him for a few moments and said, "Are you serious?" "Of course. I haven't trained much during this time, but, all right. Although there are still important things to do, it doesn't take much time to defeat Shinosuke. After all, he has the ability and the speed of sound after eating the fruit of thunder, and the thunder attribute just restrains the earth attribute." 1 minute later, Shinosuke was holding a pan, and his whole body was scorched, looking very miserable. This is still Akaban holding back, otherwise, he can directly make him doubt life. His strength is at least at the level of Jonin level, and he is not weak among his peers, but he is still more than a bit worse than Akaban and Sakumo. By the way, you happen to be Guardian Ninja, and I'm going to meet the daimyo, so you can introduce me. Akaban whispered. Wait for me to sort it out. Shinosuke sorted his curly hair, but he couldn't straighten his hair no matter what he tried. Thinking that Akaban must have something important, he was too lazy to do it, so he took him to the daimyo mansion with explosive curls. On the way, Shinosuke was very excited to talk about some of his feelings and thoughts when he was reading the comic, from the Chunin exam to saving Gaara, to chasing Sasuke and fighting against the undead duo. After a long absence, he and Akaban seemed to have endless words. Outside the daimyo's mansion, Shinosuke leaned in and said quietly, by the way, do you remember that princess? She likes your comic very much, you better avoid her. That princess. Thinking of her, Akaban couldn't help but feel a chill. Although she is not bad, it is not his dish. Even though she is a fan of his own, he does not like grass powder. Can't afford to provoke. After Akaban heard this, he gave him a thumbs up and then used the transfiguration technique to change his appearance so that the princess would not find out. With the identity of Konoha ninja and Shinosuke leading the way, it didn't take long for him to meet the daimyo. The daimyo is much older than before. However, he appeared very energetic, and he looked at ease while lying on the couch reading comics attentively. From the perspective of his mental and physical conditions, although he said I will die last time, it should not be difficult for him to live another year or two. Konoha Village Ninja, Kurama Akaban has met daimyo. I've always wanted to see you, but unfortunately I didn't have a chance. But I didn't expect you to come to my side this time, you can sit down. The daimyo didn't have the slightest arrogance, and pointed to the position in front of the couch, indicating that Akaban could sit there. Thank you, daimyo, your majesty. Akaban knelt down in front of the couch. He doesn't like this kind of sitting posture, but everyone here sits like this, facing the daimyo. He can only do as he does. The daimyo was reading the update of the 5 Kages conference a few days ago. His energy is limited and he cannot maintain the reading state for a long time, so the time he can read is very limited. He stared at Akaban, and then looked outside the window. Since the last comic show, I have been missing that fantasy game. Fantasy game? You are so old, but you still want to play the virtual reality illusion. Can your body endure it? Akaban murmured secretly in his heart. Like that kind of fantasy game, I can't afford to be responsible for your so long life that you passed away in the fantasy world by accident. And so, he thought for a long time and said, my lord, no matter how strict illusion games are controlled, it will cause a certain amount of loss to people. Your situation may not be suitable. People have to be self-disciplined. At my age, I understand this. The daimyo was full of emotion. Although he has been lingering for another year, he can experience the declining physical condition himself, and the end of his life is almost 2 or 3 years. At the moment, he and Madara are in the same mood. They have the power in hand, but the only thing they hate is not living long enough. After thinking about it for a moment, he asked again, the fantasy game is not good, but the kind of fantasy animation. Is it called this name? I can't remember it. You know, people are old and energy is not enough. Do you think it's possible? The old man said with emotions. However, he should be very clear-headed. Although the topic is awkward, it always revolves around comics and illusions. Obviously, he has been obsessed with it since the last farewell. It's no problem. Akaban smiled. The animation released by Illusion is much less lossy than the game. As long as Akaban chakra and his patience are enough, it will be no problem to show him for a day. That's great. The daimyo's eyes lit up, and he found a comfortable position to lie down, and then signaled Akaban to hurry up. With Akaban's illusion skills and spiritual power, he no longer needed any medium to use illusion arts against him. Only one thought and one look are needed to activate the illusion. The content of the illusion is continuing the follow-up plot that the daimyo did not read, the follow-up to the 5 Kages conference, and the episode of Sasuke vs. Danza. The feeling of anime is quite different from ordinary comics. There are some plots in the comics, which require readers to reverie and supplement by themselves. For most people, comics may have more room and leeway for imagination, but anime is obviously more suitable for him at his age. After a while, his breathing became steady and peaceful. In the illusion, he was sitting in an independent studio, watching the animation after the 5 Kijis conference, and he seemed very content and comfortable. Akaban didn't bother, no longer observing after the release of the genjutsu, sitting on the side and waiting quietly. Shinosuke was dumbfounded. After looking at them for a long time, he quietly asked, "You are looking for the daimyo, just for this?" "Of course not." Akaban glanced at him for a second or two, with contempt in his eyes. He didn't know that the daimyo was thinking about his anime. This was a special trip to talk with him about the village and the war, but at this time he changed his mind, but he vaguely felt that something was not good. The war has been out for so long. The daimyo cares about these things, so how could it be possible that he didn't know the news of the war, and he still had to make a special trip to contact him? It's strange. While he was pondering, there was a series of chaotic footsteps outside the door. Akaban immediately released his senses, and then instantly turned like Jiraiya. "It's the princess." Shinosuke gave Akaban a thumbs up secretly from the bottom of his heart. This reaction and perception are indeed Akaban. In the next second, a voice came in from outside, "Grandpa, I heard Akaban is here." "I've seen the princess, I'm Jiraiya." Akaban smiled slightly. "What? It's you." The princess's face is full of disgust when she sees Jiraiya's face, but when you look carefully, her eyes are piercing, as if they are shining. Obviously, her true mood is not as annoying as on the surface, but which girl does not cherish spring? Not only Akaban but even Shinosuke, who was observing secretly, was shocked. Who would have thought that this savage princess was harsh, could actually like someone like Jiraiya? The princess disliked it on the surface, but she didn't dislike it deep inside. Shinosuke was there, so she didn't doubt it, and when she saw the daimyo fall asleep, she sat on Jiraiya's side and discussed something excitedly. Akaban's face darkened. If she knew that this savage princess has a thing for Jiraiya, he should change into Orochimaru, so that the trouble will be much less. So without any other choice, he used the genjutsu technique. He created a Jiraiya to play and chat with her, and then manipulate her to leave the room. "Okay, let's go." Akaban left behind a shadow clone. After controlling the chakra in it, he gestured to Shinosuke to keep up. "Don't stay here for long. Is it really good to fool her like this?" Shinosuke followed out of the daimyo mansion and couldn't help expressing his concerns. "Originally, the reason I wanted to meet the daimyo was to talk about the upcoming war in the land of the river, but I just saw the daimyo's expression." Akaban was half talking and didn't continue to talk. Obviously, he was blinded by Danza. This is where he came to talk about Konoha and the Sand Village. The probability is that Danza knew that the daimyo and the princess had been talking about him for a long time. And since he is in the place, he lets him come and accompany him. This kind of thing is optional. However, his own teacher sometimes has a bit of nasty fun, especially in the recent period when he was very dark in the comic. Given his temperament, he must have a little revenge. Of course, Danza is not so narrow-minded, but when he talks with Akaban, he will be extraordinarily stingy. To deal with prudent and lazy people, we must use the same method to spur him on. Danza knows this way. The two left the daimyo mansion. Shinosuke broke off his desire to compete with Akaban, and brought Akaban to the Uzumaki clan, without mentioning another fight. When he returned to the clan, Akaban saw the Fusang Shinosuke talking about. She is 3 or 4 years older than him, and Shinosuke, about 17 or 18 years old. She looks more like an ordinary person in her dress, and she doesn't have any ninja tools, but from the perspective of perception, this woman is extremely talented and possesses a fairly high purity Uzumaki blood. On her waist, there is a waistcloth with the word fire. Shinosuke mentioned to him that Fusang didn't like ninjutsu and training at first, and she fled to the land of fire, and then gradually began to train chakra and ninjutsu under his persuasion. But a genius is a genius. After training in a little time, she was able to catch up to Shinosuke, and her strength reached the level of Chunin. Thanks to this talent, she was selected as the guardian ninja. In other words, Nagato's mother seems to be also called Fusang. Akaban observed secretly. Looking at her carefully, he felt that her facial features were a bit similar to Nagato, and maybe it was Nagato's mother in the future. Fusang, who was being stared at, had her face turned red from embarrassment. She also likes comics. And she first bought her comics in the Uzumaki village, so she knows who Akaban is. Akaban, you are too rude. Tsunade scowled at him. Akaban immediately returned to his senses and coughed lightly and explained, "Sorry, I just think Sister Fusang is very similar to the Nagato I wrote." "Really? I like Nagato's character very much. I feel that he is very pitiful, and his thoughts are extreme but great." Fusang sighed when she said this. That being said, it is an indisputable fact that Nagato was used by others and turned into a tool to wage war. I presume that Nagato's mother is a member of the Uzumaki tribe, so when I see you, I think of the mother who wanted to protect him but was killed. Akaban didn't hide it. Although the comics are black and white, it is not clear whether Nagato is a member of the Uzumaki family, but from the color illustrations and posters, it can be seen that he has the line of the Uzumaki family. Fusang was very happy after hearing it and chuckled softly. Tsunade believed this explanation and turned her head to observe Fusang's facial features and characteristics. Although Nagato seldom appeared in the comics, she still saw his picture when he was young. And so, suddenly, everyone really felt that Fusang was very similar to Nagato. With the topic, Akaban, Tsunade, and Fusang quickly became acquainted with each other, and the four of them made a circle around the Uzumaki clan to show Akaban the way to get familiar, and then inevitably talked about some daily life trivia. It could be heard that the Uzumaki family had a very good life after arriving in the land of fire. In the clan, many people even imitate the costumes of Naruto and One Piece, but their hair is all red, which looks strange at first glance. The other is from how the two happily conversed, even sometimes ignoring the two, Tsunade and Akaban watching them thought that Shinosuke might have a thing for this gentle eldest sister. It's not weird since Fusang looks really good. Although she is 3 or 4 years older, she is gentle and considerate, which is really a fatal temptation for people like Shinosuke who have lacked love since childhood. But one thing is that when a child is born from them in the future, does it mean he is going to be called Sarutabi Nagato? This is a problem. He thought wickedly in his heart. In the afternoon, Akaban was walking around and found a bunch of children swarming out of the clan and running into the street. He felt something was strange, and asked Fusang in a low voice, "Is there any activity in this place happening now?" "No, Akaban-sama, it's just that your comic has arrived, so everyone should run over and buy it, lest it runs out of stock later," Fusang said with a smile. "Buy comics? Tsunad's eyes widened, quite incredible. Everyone followed a few steps and saw many children rushing out on the street, rushing in one direction. Later, the crowd grew and even the carriages and horses had to make way for them. Although many people buy it in Konoha, it is not as crazy as here. Don't be surprised. Unlike in Konoha, this place is far from the factory, and the delivery speed is slow. And everyone has some money. So many will buy it, so it's also normal that some people can't get a copy. Shinosuke explained with a smile. Akaban stayed for a few seconds, then nodded. This is the first time he has come to this place in the country of fire. Watching the comic update delivered, he can only say that it is much more lively than in the country of river. Before long, some children ran back with a comic in their hands. The children of the Uzumaki clan have good physiques and run fast, and they often get them as soon as the comic updates arrive. The law and order in this place may not be the point where there are no thieves on the streets, but absolutely no one dares to attack red hair. Because everyone knows that the redheads are the children of the Uzumaki clan, a ninja family, the clan that is guarding the daimyo, and they are not the ones they can afford to provoke. Ha! This comic. The daimyo's eyes widened, and his mood swings sharpened. From the intro alone, he knows it's the popular comic from author Shinosuke. Kafir. Who can stand this? What's terrible is that although he is already old, he suddenly felt the feeling of being young again, and it's extremely strong. His body was so warm as if he was bathing in a hot spring, full of energy and strength. I haven't experienced this stimulating feeling for many years. Daimyo had bright eyes and stared at the screen without blinking. When the plot on the screen reached its peak, he trembled all over. The strange thing is that the plot behind it seems not as attractive to him as before, and it has become a little dull. After half an hour, the illusion gradually dissipated, and the daimyo woke up, his face glowing as if he was 10 years younger. After experiencing it for a while, he said incredulously, "This is incredible, how did you do it?" As we all know, my Kurama clan masters the ability to control the 5 senses. This is just a trivial technique. Akaban's shadow clone smiled slightly. Just now, he not only maintained the illusion skills but also quietly used medical ninjutsu to get rid of some stubborn diseases in the daimyo. Although it is impossible to increase his lifespan, there is no problem in living longer from having healthy health. Just now I felt as if I was back when I was young, calling. It's incredible. I didn't expect that illusion could be used in this way. Akaban, would you like to stay and join the Guardian Shinobi? The daimyo stared at Akaban. He earnestly hopes that Akaban can stay and become his guardian ninja, to ensure his safety, and also these interesting games, comics and anime. I hold an important position in Konoha, I'm afraid it can't be done. But how could Akaban agree? Even if it is a shadow clone, it is impossible to agree to such an absurd request. In Konoha, he is the second in command of Anbu and is highly regarded by the third Hokage. He also has friendships with Uchiha and many families. Sanin is his buddy, and Sakumo is like his brother. In addition to the princess, Shinosuke and daimyo, who else is there in this place? If he really stayed, the next generation crown princes would probably hate him, and that princess was really not his cup of tea. So he didn't even hesitate to reject it. After the clone paused for a moment, he continued, "This time I'm here to see the daimyo-sama, which is mainly for the war of the land of river. Next time, maybe more than one shinobi village will declare war on us, and it may even reach the point of the previous war. The daimyo raised his eyes and stared at Ikeban for a few seconds. Afterwards, he nodded slightly and said, I had expected it, but Danza told you personally that things are really unusual. Don't worry, I will fully support Konoha. Thank you, daimyo-sama. Ikeban bowed. Konoha's relationship with the daimyo is very special. It is true that he will be notified before such a big war, but it is not important to say that this kind of thing is too important. Even if they don't say it, the daimyo won't care. The support is still support. After all, Land of Fire has the current land and has nothing to do with Konoha. Supporting Konoha means helping oneself. He would not be so short-sighted. But the daimyo thought for a while and couldn't help but ask, I want to know who the enemy is it the hidden sand village? More than that, there is Uchiha Madara, absolutely. Ikeban replied. Madara. The daimyo was stunned for a few seconds. The masked figure in the comics and the previous domineering demeanor appeared in his mind, and his face was a little confused. Madara is still alive. What a monster! He was killed by the Senju Hashirama back then, but he could still crawl back from hell. He is this kind of person who doesn't stop without fighting or aiming. Daimyo sighed with emotion in his heart. I see, continue to experience the illusion, but forget the kind just now, after all, people are getting old. Okay. The daimyo is quite approachable, and he almost treats Ikeban at the same level, so the shadow clone didn't refuse his request. With a simple thought, the clone once again cast a genjutsu. With his current ability, even if it is only a shadow clone, using this level of illusion does not require much chakra. And the content of the illusion is pain attacking Konoha. It's all big scenes, let the daimyo watch the excitement. Of course, the shadow clone knows the degree of control, so daimyo is allowed to watch the 2D animation drama in the form of a studio instead of the real fantasy with 100% experience version. Speaking of which, is it really okay for you to leave a clone with daimyo? What do you mean? Ikeban sat by the woods, watching the training of the Uzumaki clan's children, and beside him, Shinosuke sat on a stone bench made of soil jutsu. Do you not know the traits of your own shadow clone? Shinosuke reminded him. There are many incidents of his shadow clones doing whatever they want. For example, in the class gathering from the past, when Ikeban left a clone to attend for him, the class gathering became an Ikeban clone advertising time, which indirectly offended the Hyuga clan. There is also the origin of Shinosuke. A discerning person knows at a glance that Shinosuke is Ikeban. Ikeban leaned against the tree trunk and said calmly, if it wants to put someone, it will only pit me. He will not pit the village. So it's fine, compared with this little trouble. I hate to be with the daimyo and the princess. No one in this place likes her. Shinosuke agreed. The children of the Uzumaki family live a regular life every day. They practice in the morning, play for a while, then buy comics in the afternoon, come back to continue practicing, and have a good rest at night. So after the children read it, Shinosuke also borrowed a copy. He read halfway and raised his brows and said, "Are you going to take refuge here? How is it possible? You know I have such a good relationship with my teacher, this is nothing." Ikeban curled his lips. Fleeing. Is it necessary? With his strength, Danza wouldn't stand a chance. Forget it, Shinosuke will not understand. While staying in the Uzumaki clan, Shinosuke has completely fallen into the land of warmth and tenderness of this place. After sitting and reading the comics for a while, he let out a sigh. and then accidentally saw Fusang coming out of the clan land and he immediately ran to her side. Akaban just took a look but didn't get up to chase him. He didn't want to watch them flirting with each other. With the subtle emotions he can sense through his observation haki, he feels that Fusang probably also likes Shinosuke. Only one is an ordinary member of the Uzumaki family, and the other is the eldest son of the third Hokage. In terms of identity, it can be called a world of difference. Therefore, it is not that Fusang dislikes Shinosuke, but that she feels that she is a subjugated national slave and an ordinary citizen. She has a hidden sense of inferiority in front of Shinosuke. She dare not confess to Shinosuke, let alone believe that Shinosuke likes herself. Akaban didn't want to mix things up with the young couple. It's true that love is always a little bit rough. Isn't it all performed in Korean dramas? However, his love road doesn't seem to be bumpy. Tsunade. And although no one confesses, he can see that Tsunade has feelings for him. After all, he is only a child in appearance but inside he is a grown-up man, so how can he not know what kind of look Tsunade gives him? It's that this child will become scary as she grows older. When she is gentle, she can melt any Iron Man, but when she becomes angry, a punch from her can destroy a house. Who can stand it? Akaban murmured secretly in his heart while thinking about tomorrow's affairs. On Konoha's side, it should be done at the same time, and there will be a ritual day tomorrow. The ritual of the Uzumaki clan is presided over by a clan with a special physique. The chakras of such people are often the strongest, such as Uzumaki Maito and Uzumaki Kushina. By this generation, it should have been Uzumaki Tomo. However, she and the 10 children of the Uzumaki family were separated from the family, which is equivalent to a separate family. They are no longer members of this family, and the candidate must be redrawn. Judging from the content of the chat with Shinosuke, the saint who was temporarily selected should be Fusang. At that time, he doesn't know if that death mask will be invited out. Akaban thought to himself. He wanted to participate in the ritual day, just to know what the god of death was and what it had to do with the Uzumaki clan. Obviously, Uzumaki Maito also wants to know, especially after getting the Bat Devil fruit. If the Grim Reaper is conscious, wise, and watching the Uzumaki family, then since Uzumaki Maito gets the Bat Devil fruit, she will go against the Reaper's will. By the afternoon, the shadow clone in the daimyo had returned. Sure enough, the shadow clone pitied him for a while, showing the Kaifirime to the daimyo. Thankfully the old man didn't get too excited, or else he didn't know how to explain it if the daimyo died from pleasure. Fortunately, the daimyo didn't care but happily praised him again and again. In the evening, all the members of the Uzumaki clan gathered together and held a lively feast. However, some people are preparing for the sacrifice the next day. The next morning, everyone except Akaban got up early. Due to the war, most of the old people died in the country of Uzumaki, and those who fled to the country of fire were young people and children who were powerful or energetic with potential. This led to the general understanding of the sacrificial day, but the specific details were somewhat forgotten. Fortunately, Uzumaki Maito understands. Although she has been away from the family for several decades, the process of the family sacrificial day cannot be forgotten in her mind. This time she played a role in presiding over the overall situation. Because of this, her status in the new Uzumaki clan has also become an ancestor level. When Akaban wakes up at noon, the general layout has been prepared, only some details have not yet been prepared, and these are also irrelevant to Akaban. As a foreigner, he only needs to wait for the evening ceremony to begin. Comment 3. Comment. At dusk, the family land of the Uzumaki became more and more lively. Akaban was fortunate enough to be invited over, along with the observation of the ritual, and a calamity tribulation. Uzumaki clan's population was greatly reduced, and the training field where the celebration was located was not even full. However, the place of worship was not in the training ground, but in a small forest not far from the training ground. An ancestral hall was built in this small forest. As the large group arrived outside the woods, Akaban saw the inside. Fusang sat down, kneeling before a mosque, muttering words. The distance is too far, it is not clear what she is saying, but it should be a sacrificial word. Akaban watched silently while observing the masks. There are many faces. However, among these masks, only one side is related to the god of death, through which the gulban and release can be performed, and then the soul that was swallowed in before is released. Although it has to pay a certain price, it can be seen that this god of death must be related to the Uzumaki clan, and even said that he is probably the ancestor of the Uzumaki clan. Akaban was full of curiosity. Secretly, he released his perception and observation haki, trying to observe the strangeness on the mask through his powerful perception ability, but he did not find any results. Maybe it was far away, or maybe the ceremony didn't start, so he couldn't see the floor at all. Not far away, Uzumaki Maito stood quietly, near the small ancestral hall where the sacrifice was held, but her eyes were fixed on one of the masks. That mask is only needed for the highest sacrifice. Akaban walked to her and asked in a low voice, "Grandma, that mask?" Wait." Uzumaki Maito's eyes remained motionless. It didn't take long. Fusang stretched out her hands and held a mask from the mask stand. The voice in her mouth became louder and louder. It was a peculiar spell, and it seemed to be a sacrificial word. Afterwards, everyone followed. Under the night, the forest they were in is like having a bonfire party, so lively, and in the middle is the Uzumaki Fusang wearing a mask. From her, Akaban felt the more powerful chakra. This is. Akaban's eyes widened, and at this moment he finally felt the power of the mask. This sacrifice made Fusang stronger. Kind of like bloodline purification. He couldn't say it for sure, but he looked sideways at Uzumaki Maito and found that she was also frowning. Apparently, she also found the abnormality of Fusang's body. She was not unaware of this situation before, but this time she was the clearest. Fusang's blood is getting stronger. And her physique is getting closer to Uzumaki Maito. The people around have weakened to a certain extent. This is a ceremony that requires a price. Uzumaki Maito whispered. She was not far away from Akaban, so the whispered words were not heard by the others. Although Tsunade wanted to get closer, there were a bunch of people in between, so she had to watch Akaban whispering to her grandma from a distance. When he was reminded, Akaban noticed the people around him. This weakening was so weak that it was almost imperceptible. Only Uzumaki Maito could find traces. But after Akaban was reminded, he also noticed the changes. Their physique seems to have been looted. Of course, it's just that everyone robbed a bit, and the power of the mask seemed to gather them on Fusang, bringing Fusang's physique and bloodline closer to their ancestors. It's no wonder that in each generation, the patriarch will choose those who have the most vigor and those who have the most chakra among the tribe to be the priest. So that's how it is. Uzumaki Maito sighed in a low voice. The Uzumaki family has a special physique. According to her speculation, it may be related to the blood of their ancestors, and each generation will always produce one or two people with particularly strong physiques. For example, she, and Uzumaki Tomo. Uzumaki Tomo's physique far surpassed the other 10 children. Even Fusang, who went through the ceremony, was not as good as Tomo. As for surpassing Maito, it was even more impossible. Originally, if there were no accidents, the blood of the Uzumaki clan would gradually weaken, just like the current Senju clan. But it seems that's not going to happen. As long as there are Uzumaki tribes who know the ritual, the Uzumaki clan will strive once again from its fall. Akaban looked at Fusang thoughtfully, with some understanding in his heart. In the original story, Uzumaki Kushina physique was definitely strong. She could use the adamantine sealing chains to control 9 tails, and possessed a very strong sealing ability. At that time, the Uzumaki village had been wiped out, and the inheritance was cut off. There were no ceremonies to be held. In addition, the Uzumaki members who survived intermarried with foreigners, so the blood and physique gradually weakened. In this way, the importance of the death mask to the Uzumaki clan need not be said, but it is probably only useful to the Uzumaki clan. Even if Akaban takes it, he cannot use its effect in this respect. In addition, one's own blood comes from an exchange. Taking it will not benefit him at all, and Akaban does not know how to use the sealing technique, and cannot really make good use of the mask. In the end, it may cause a commotion. At this time, the sacrifice has ended. Uzumaki Maito took Akaban out of the forest, thinking about the situation as she walked. Akaban took a few steps and couldn't help asking, "Grandma, where did those masks come from?" "I don't know, but maybe the ancestors of our clan left it behind, and I even suspect that the death god involved in the gull seal is probably the ancestor of the Uzumaki clan." Uzumaki Maito sighed. Although they are just unfounded guesses, she does have this feeling faintly, but this is very strange. Why did the ancestors turn themselves into death gods? Few people in the clan use gulls to seal them all up, so no one has really seen what a god of death looks like. Akaban saw the mask of death and became more curious in his heart. That night, when he perceived that everyone had gone to sleep, Akaban activated his eternal Mangekyo, and then created another Akaban, and asked him to replace himself to check the mask. In the ancestral hall in the middle of the night, only some people on the periphery take care of the mask. Akaban is the actual effect of illusion. It has the ability to switch between illusion and entity, so no one noticed it and walked into the ancestral hall. In the world of illusion, Akaban saw this mask through it. Its whole body is weird and full of peculiar power. From it, Akaban sees a weird mark. This mark may be associated with death. But Akaban had no further thoughts of exploring. He came to see the death mask, mostly to satisfy the curiosity in his heart. On the other hand, he came out to avoid the limelight. This death mask was of little use to him, and there was no need to take risks to steal it. As a result, Akaban plans to return to Konoha tomorrow. At this time, in the Hidden Cloud Village, the Anbu ninja hurriedly sent the latest comic update. The Reikage sat in a chair, finished all the affairs impatiently, and was about to go to sleep. As a result, "My lord, the comic, it's here." The Anbu ninja was panting. He ran back from the country of fire without stopping in the middle. This exhaustion made him want to lie down and have a good night's sleep, but before that he wanted to deliver the comics to a. "Actually, you don't have to be in such a hurry. Anyway, it's delivered, let me see." The third Reikage said, but still took it. He originally wanted to go to rest, but seeing his subordinates deliver it so dutifully, it was hard for him to talk about sleeping first. In addition, he is really curious about the follow-up development. The follow-up of the comic will inevitably involve the Hidden Cloud Village. After all, the previous chapter was talking about the 8-tailed and 9-tailed beasts. And the 8-tailed beasts belong to Hidden Cloud Village. In addition, according to the prophecy of the Toad Sage, Naruto must find the 8 tails to complete his final training. What development will it be? The third Raikage held his head and opened the comic and began to read. In the beginning, Naruto and Killer Bee met. This is not surprising, but when the Falls of Truth appeared, and how a ninja from Hidden Cloud Village talked about it, the third Raikage face finally turned ugly. The Falls of Truth are currently the top secret of Hidden Cloud Village. Even the people in the village do not know it and the trails in it, let alone outsiders. But Kurama Akaban knew it. Did someone leak it? No, it's impossible. The third Raikage's mentality is about to explode. How could that kid named Kama Akaban know so much? But is it true that the Falls of Truth can make a Jinchuriki power stronger? He couldn't be sure. Conquering the dark side of oneself is not easy after all, and even he didn't dare to fight his own dark side. And Naruto's victory over the enemy with his mouth alone is completely a fantasy operation, and it is basically impossible to reproduce. My lord, you go to rest first. The third Raikage waved his hand to indicate that he could leave. The Anbu ninja left. He stayed in the office for a while, then left the office and returned home. And Fukai has been taken home by him. At this time Fukai was not older than his age, and he had good talents and abilities. After sealing the 8 tails in his body, he did indeed suppress the tail beast and fulfilled the duties of being a Jinchuriki. In order to ensure that he will not go violently, the third Raikage even took time every day to chat with him, tell stories, and talk to him. It can be said that he did his best in all aspects. Only comics, he has been hesitating whether to show it to him or not. Maybe it's time to show Fukai the comics. If the villagers know that Fukai becomes a Jinchuriki, it will become a new vicious circle. Remembering how all the Jinchuriki were treated in the comics, the third Raikage thought that he must not let that kind of thing happen again on Fukai, especially Fukai in Berserk. He will never allow it. Back home, Fukai is not sleeping. Only after hearing the movement, he pretended to sleep for the first time. However, soon, the third Raikage walked into his room, put down a pile of comic books, sat on the floor and said, "Fukai, I won't tell you a story today, instead, I brought you comics, you can read it yourself." Comic. Fukai, who was pretending to be asleep, sat up immediately, leaned over and took a look, and said thoughtfully, "This is also drawn by Kurama Akaban, not One Piece, another set of comics." "Yes, and I am here to read it with you." That's right. He wants Fukai to truly control the 8-tailed beast, instead of simply becoming a Jinchuriki and being disgusted by others. He should have a brighter future, and even inherit his position. Comment. 9 comments. Vote. Chapter 339, Chapter 339, Sage Mode. The next day, Akaban returned to Konoha first with Uzumaki Mito from the Uzumaki family land, but Tsunade and the other 11 Uzumaki children did not return. It's not that Tsunade doesn't want to return, she is responsible for spreading medical ninjutsu. Each of the Uzumaki clan has powerful chakra control ability and chakra quantity. Some of them even have special physiques to heal others, and they are Konoha's allies. Konoha is obliged to teach them medical ninjutsu because of emotion and reason. Akaban and Uzumaki Maito came back, on the one hand, because of their identity and strength, on the other hand, it didn't make sense for them to stay there. After returning from the trip, he didn't consume chakra at all, but the chakra in the yin seal became more full due to a day's rest. Being a Jinchuriki is so cool. Akaban was even considering whether or not to agree to Uzumaki Maito's suggestion of becoming a fake Jinchuriki. After all, after today, Naruto will learn the nine-tailed chakra mode. Since Naruto comprehended it, how can he not? Anyway, it's just a matter of points. In addition, the Sage mode can also be put on the agenda. Of course, Akaban does not necessarily have to learn from the toads. The Sage mode is to mix natural energy into the chakra so that it can achieve a new balance with physical energy and spiritual energy. Akaban has super strong chakra control ability. For him, this is not difficult. Most people's problem is how to sense natural energy, but Akaban has the fruit of thunder. The thunder fruit is a logia fruit. It can pump natural energy itself. Thanks to this, Akaban's response to natural energy is also superior to ordinary people. This level is not difficult for him. However, he did not immediately declare that he wanted to share Nine-Tails chakra. Akaban is firm on his decision. At least not until 3 or 4 days later. Back at the comic shop, he saw 2 shadow clones, one lying dying on the bed, while the other one drawing laboriously with a paintbrush in his hand. They are trying to reduce consumption, in order to make themselves as clones last longer. Yo, finally. Come back, Tilda. The 2 of them didn't finish speaking, and their bodies broke with a bang. The limit has been reached. If he doesn't come back, I'm afraid the shadow clone will automatically disappear. What a hero. Akaban secretly gave a thumbs up, and nothing else. The spirit of persisting to the last second is worthy of encouragement, which is completely different from those lazy clones from before. Then in the next second, he separated 4 shadow clones. Today is the same as yesterday, with 5 more chapters for Naruto and 10 more chapters for One Piece, trying to finish Judicial Island. Akaban didn't put all the clones into painting. One of them has to sense the existence of natural energy just like him, so there is no way to get involved in painting. At this time, he has more than 10,000 points left. This more than 10,000 is the total amount of previous savings plus yesterday's income. With these, the exchange of the Sage mode and the Nine-Tails model is enough. It's just that the attributes are precious, and the points can be saved. In the afternoon, Akaban couldn't sense the natural energy, and instead fell asleep unconsciously sitting there. The shadow clone was no better than him. He was asleep but slept a little more concealable than the main body, not so arrogantly snoring. Damn, it's hard. The points that should be spent still have to be spent, so we can't be thrifty. Akaban sighed inwardly. If he persists in training the Sage mode on his own, gods know when he will be able to master it. Anyway, the system points are also his hard-earned, and after redeeming Sage mode, it is equivalent to the hard work of his own training. That's right. It's my own hard work. After comforting himself for a while, the depression in his heart was swept away, he was refreshed, and he felt that his thoughts were much more transparent. Wanting to understand this, he kicked away the cushion underneath and walked out of the house. Akaban went out, intending to take a look at today's sales, but inadvertently glanced at the comment section. The comment column is full of notes. The discussion that everyone left the most was not about One Piece or the falls of truth in the hidden cloud village, but the sentence Naruto, I'm sorry. Sorry. Akaban stopped and read it for a few seconds, then gently shook his head. Young master, these all are left by the villagers. They feel that Ninetales Jinchuriki has had a hard time, and all the culprits are these villagers. Kurama Yunlane hurried over to explain. Akaban glanced back because, in the afternoon, not many readers in the hall were reading comics. Most people were sitting there drinking juice and chatting and didn't care about it. Seeing that no one was paying attention, he said, they are just all bystanders in Naruto's life. And also because of this, the role of Iruka is even more precious. Human nature is changeable. At this time, the villagers saw the side of Naruto guarding the village after he grew up and naturally felt that the villagers who bullied Naruto were excessive and sinful. But when they become those people themselves, they feel that they deserve it. Because they are taking revenge. Can't beat the Ninetales. It doesn't matter, there is a child who is the vessel of the Ninetales beast. Even if they can't beat the vessel, they can bully it. Not only Naruto, all Jinchuriki in the world are treated the same way, but right now, due to Uzumaki Mito power and prestige, the Konoha hadn't experienced the calamity the nine-tailed beast will bring so far. Of course. If there are really people who have saved the whole village and even assumed the ability to save the world, I am afraid that no one will be stingy with an apology. Akaban looked back and glanced at it, and then decisively used Flying Thunder God Jutsu and went home. It's still early and it's not dinner time. But he didn't go home just to sleep, but to find a quiet place to train Sage Mode. The woods around the Kurama clan are just a good choice. He sat down, decisively spent more than 4,000 points, exchanged for the training method of the Sage Mode. Before long, a series of memories flooded into his mind, followed by the use of Sage Mode. This set of Sage patterns originated from Naruto, and the degree of mutation is not high. After spending the points to redeem it, Akaban immediately feels a kind of spiritual blessing. Sage Mode, I can do it. He sat cross-legged and began to absorb natural energy. Natural energy can be found everywhere, and 3 great Sage regions only have special methods to absorb and use them. Without the Holy Land secret method, they can only absorb energy through their own exploration. Originally Akaban planned to use the latter method, but the result of failure was cut off. Now it proves that relying on his system is much better. After a while, there was a slight change in the corner of his eyes, and there were signs of frog change, but this was only the beginning. Akaban also has power of 6 paths. The last time he forcibly synthesized the power of 6 paths through the system, it stimulated his eyes to grow into Rinnegan, and now he can extract a small part of it himself. A few seconds passed. Akaban's frog transformation has also disappeared, and his whole body seems to be integrated into nature but exudes a powerful force. What a powerful force! At this moment, he felt that Madara was nothing more than an Eni, and the idea of killing Madara in the land of wind and directly sending Madara to King Yama occurred in his heart. Unfortunately, his own power of 6 paths is too little, it can only last for 1 minute. Akaban had many thoughts in his mind, and countless thoughts arose. After a long time, he decided to wait for the comics tomorrow, exchange the 9-tailed mode, and then rent some 9-tailed chakras, so that he could reach the strongest state before going to a decisive battle with Madara. With a complete plan, Akaban no longer thinks too much, gathers up his thoughts and then uses the Flying Thunder God Jutsu to appear at the Hokage building. The clones have already completed their work diligently and sent the comics to the factory by Yamano Izumi. Originally, he could go home directly, so he didn't need to come out again. However, the third Hokage sent someone to the comic shop to summon him, that's why he is here. Naturally, this kind of thing cannot be done by his clone. So he can only take a trip by himself. He sighed softly, went upstairs and knocked on the door. He saw Danza and the third Hokage sitting in the office. The two sat opposite each other, drinking tea and smoking. The atmosphere looked quite strange. This is... What's going on? Akaban was stunned for a moment, and the two sat opposite each other, looking like chatting and drinking tea, but it was definitely not that simple to let himself come here. He closed the door and was about to ask. But Hiruzen pointed to a chair in the corner of the office and said, "You move there and sit by yourself. Akaban, you're strong, so strong that I can't handle you anymore, but, is it right to paint your teacher black in your comic?" Danza turned his head and looked at Akaban with a smiling face, but having a smile on Danza's face is quite chilling. That can even make a child cry just from seeing it. Cough. What do you mean? Akaban couldn't help but cough because what Danza said was about to happen. In the following plot, it seems that there is still a scene belonging to Danza, the evolution process of the psychological state. Torun was kind before but was forced by Danza to become an Anbu. He even killed his adoptive mother, and finally lost himself. Danza can't get rid of this pot. After all, like Mitokado Homura, there is no formidable person style at all. Even if he passes the pot to Mitokado Homura, everyone will automatically think it was Danza behind the scenes. Danza heard the feeling of helplessness and pain in that one eye, and then sighed softly. Forget it, I'm just kidding, it's just a comic anyway. We summoned you here because of a serious business and it's about the hidden sand village. With the chaos, now Madara has completely controlled the hidden sand village, and Ebizo can hardly escape to the front line in the land of river. Escaped. Akaban was stunned for a moment. He knew that Danza originally planned to hope that Ebizo could serve as an internal riposte to send information about what's happening in the hidden sand village, and at the same time, he could instigate Kyo and Zack. Who would have thought? He just ran to the front line. There must be a hidden agenda in this, but the third Hokage and Danza are obviously not concerned whether the issue has a hidden agenda or not, but Ebizo leaving the sand village means that they won't know anything about what's happening inside the sand village. So what to do next is the question. Ebizo said that he will try his best to persuade Kyo to unite with us, but the village is under Madara control now. Should we just let it go or investigate? The tone of Hiruzen is heavy. Exploring the current sand village is no simple task. Uchiha Madara is powerful, and Black Zetsu is good at reconnaissance and hiding. After the third Kazekage becomes a Jinchuriki, his strength is definitely not weak, and he should be at a Kage level. With such a lineup, even if they sent elite Chunin to perform a mission, it would only ask them to die. The only person who can do this is Akaban. It's better to go and see. Madara transfers Ebizo and Kyo. So he must have a plan. If we don't know what they do, we will fall into passivity. He agreed without much thought. Regardless of whether there was this incident, Akaban would go to Sand Village to find out the truth. Therefore, there is no big difference between whether there is this task or not, but Danza and Hiruzen sitting together and enjoying themselves, which surprised him. Although these two are not deadly rivals, they are not opposed to each other, but their relationship is definitely not much better. So he can only say, what a wonderful fate. Akaban left the office of the Hokage building. Hiruzen sat face to face with Danza and continued with a smile, "It's nice to be young. The future belongs to them, and sooner or later we old people will retreat to the second line. Heh, I don't want to retire with you, besides. From now on, Akaban's chances of getting the fourth Hokage position are higher than those of Orochimaru." Danza sneered, finished his last sip of water, then got up and left. And Hiruzen couldn't refute him, which made him helpless. In the beginning, he shouldn't have agreed to Danza taking Akaban as his disciple, otherwise, there would be no room for him to look down on him, which is like the mockery of being caught by Danza twice. But the position of the fourth Hokage? Who said it must be Akaban? Just as he never expected Jiraiya to be Hokage, Hiruzen also didn't think Akaban would be Hokage. Not from the lack of ability, but character. If they say that Jiraiya has no talent, that is pure nonsense. Will he, the third Hokage, accept a disciple without talent? The reason why Hiruzen did not think that Jiraiya and Akaban could be Hokage was because these two people were free and sloppy people who liked freedom more than anything else. Unless he, the third Hokage, died without a candidate, they would not agree to become a Hokage for sure. If he compares Akaban to a character from the comic, he will compare him to Kakashi, who has the same personality, the same laziness and freedom. If they are not the only option, they will readily decline the Hokage position without a second thought. The next day, Izumi Yamano sent a new volume of comics to Konoha, and Akaban got up early today. When he arrived at the comic shop, he just saw Yamano Izumi sending the comic, and then returned to the factory. He is very busy. After the popularity of comics, his factory received new orders every day, and many wild cartoonists even submitted manuscripts to his factory, asking him to help publish them. Of course, he doesn't know what publication review is. Most of them look at it and feel it works. Just let that person pay for publication. The comic business is getting more and more prosperous, and Akaban is also very happy in his eyes. After all, this career is driven by himself, and this sense of accomplishment is difficult to measure with money. The reason why he woke up early today was not because he got up to watch comic sales. During the war, the sales of comics were very affected. It would be good to have a few thousand a day. What he mainly cares about is the two plots drawn today. In Naruto, there is Naruto in his Nine Tails chakra mode. One Piece, on the other hand, there is the Navy-style Life Return. Life Return is still a very practical move in One Piece. It can infuse its own consciousness into any part of the body, and then achieve the purpose of free manipulation. In the comics, its most used is to eat a bunch of things in one breath, and then use it to quickly digest. Not only does the body recover, but also the physical fitness. For Akaban, this ability means that as long as he has something to eat, he can quickly restore his body energy. And with the food pill, he can almost replenish his body energy in seconds. That's why this technique is important for him. However, the price is also quite high, requiring 5,000 points to redeem. On the contrary, the price of the Nine Tails chakra mode is relatively low, and it can be redeemed for 1,000. The reason is simple. Akaban possesses quite a high chakra control ability, with the physique of the Uzumaki clan and his Rinnegan. Controlling and using the nine-tailed chakra is a piece of cake for him. The price of more than 1,000 points is mainly for the ability to activate and use the Nine Tails chakra mode. After all, Akaban is not a Jinchuriki, and he is not familiar with the Tail Beast chakra. This tuition is still to be paid. Otherwise, just like yesterday, It would be embarrassing if he began to train but just fell asleep. So when he got up in the morning, he quickly redeemed the two abilities. The return of life is simple. With the help of the system, Akaban easily learned it and used his breakfast to experiment. The results are very gratifying. A pile of rice balls may cause indigestion before eating it, but today he easily digested it and turned it into his own body energy. Although there was an overflow, which caused him to be energetic, in the end, it was not harmful. As for the Nine Tails chakra mode, without the chakra of the Kyuubi, he couldn't use this ability, so after breakfast, he teleported to the Senju clan in one go. When he arrived at the Senju clan, Uzumaki Maito had already gotten up early. As Tsunade and the children of the Uzumaki clan staying here left, the land of the Senju clan became quite deserted, and Uzumaki Chihaya was the only company beside Uzumaki Maito. TL/N, Chihaya is the little girl Akaban rescued from Black Zetsu. She thinks she has been abandoned by her clan, so she doesn't want to return to Uzumaki's clan. As usual, Uzumaki Maito lay on the rocking chair and swayed. From time to time, she got up and painted one or two strokes, as if she were in a match with Akaban's normal painting. She sensed the arrival of Akaban very early, so she was not surprised at all. She lay down and shook her head before asking, "Your kid got up so early today, let's talk, do you want the chakra of the Kyuubi?" He. Akaban rubbed his head. The day before yesterday he said that he didn't want the tail beast chakra, but he came here today, which really made his thick face blush. But for strength, is embarrassment important? This boy from Kurama is shameless today. Well, I read your comic, your idea is to divide the Nine Tails in half. She was half talking and frowned suddenly. The little guy in her body is a bit noisy. Kyuubi is not to blame. Although he didn't have his haughtiness in front of Uzumaki Maito, they were talking about how to divide him into two. Who can bear it? And also, he is still the leader of the tailed beast. So how did he fall to the point where others would divide himself into two today? If it happens, will he be divided into 4 or 8 tomorrow? That's why it wants to make trouble. But in the next second, the chakras of Maito Uzumaki swarmed over and closed the only window between it and the outside world. Is Kyuubi causing trouble? It's nothing, he is just throwing a tantrum. Let's continue with the topic just now. Do you want to divide the Nine Tails in two, or just take part of its chakra? Uzumaki Maito sat up and asked. Dividing him into two may be harmful to your body, so borrowing some of his chakras is fine. Akaban did not hesitate. It is good to divide the Nine Tails into one yin and one yang, but if they want to do this, they must first release the tail beast and then use a powerful sealing technique to forcibly cut it into yin and yang. If it happens, the pressure was all on Uzumaki Maito's side, which was too bad for Uzumaki Maito. Uzumaki Maito didn't object, and after lightly nodding, she made a hand sealed with both hands and forcibly pulled out a part of chakra from Kyuubi. Ah, poor Kyuubi. Akaban wiped off a handful of bitter tears for Kyuubi. This is the meat on the chopping board. If she wants to cut, she will cut it. Being a tail beast is really hard. He was thinking like this, only seeing Uzumaki Maito push a chakra out of her body. Akaban could feel that this part of chakra was unconscious, it was gathered into a sphere, floating on the palm of her hand, showing a fiery red color. This is Kyuubi chakra. Akaban stretched out his hand and sensed the violent and powerful aura attached to chakra in the air. When his hand touched the fiery chakra, this force immediately poured into him. the grumpy and crazy chakra. Kyuubi resentment is quite deep. He sighed secretly in his heart, and then used his own chakra to quickly surround this part of the chakra. With the use of an evil sealing jutsu, the Kyuubi chakra was immediately sealed. The strength of the evil sealing method mainly depends on the will of the user. Akaban has a Rinnegan and Uzumaki physique, and his chakra is much better than ordinary people. With high strength and strong mental power, it is easy to suppress this thing. The advantage of the evil sealing method is that you can just take it when you want to use it. In fact, he has another idea to seal the Kyuubi chakra inside the yin seal, so that by using the yin seal times release, he can quickly use and release the tail beast chakra. However, from the first chakra alone he knows it's not possible. He didn't dare to pour this volatile and crazy energy on his yin seal on the center of his eyebrows. What if he became a fool? Akaban was very afraid and didn't want to die inexplicably, especially in such a ridiculous way. After sealing the chakra, he began to deal with the grumpiness in the chakra, and then followed the nine-tails chakra mode method to draw the nine-tailed chakra. The next second, a strange chakra gushes out of him, all golden. Because of the lack of tailed beast chakra, the increase after using the nine-tails mode is not large, but this is enough to show that Akaban's idea is feasible. However, in this way, if he wants to use the nine-tails chakra mode, he has to come back to Uzumaki Mito from time to time to charge. It's okay. This power, can the tail beast be used in this way? Uzumaki Mito was a little surprised. Although she had used the tail beast chakra before, her usage was relatively rough, and more focused on suppression and extraction. Akaban's method is to directly use the tail beast chakra as if he himself has become another tail beast, which has a high demand for her own controllability, but it is also stronger. That's it for this part, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. And also tell me in the comment section down below if you have any recommendation. Thanks for watching.